and you can let me know as well, right? So I'll just share my screen. So I have a few examples prepared within the Excel as well that I'll demonstrate. I have a few slides first that I'd like to run all of you through, right? Let me just minimize this and put this at the bottom, right? So uh, Excel has changed. When I say Excel has changed, what does it mean? I'm assuming most of you work on Excel. You've done projects or some sort of analysis, maybe in your previous roles anywhere, or maybe in the current curriculum as well. So in 2021, what happened was Excel changed its calculation engine. When I say Excel changed its calculation engine means in Excel for the past 30 years, since its inception, the default was you write one formula and you get the output in one cell. When in 2021, when Microsoft made changes to the Excel's calculation engine, what Microsoft essentially did was it introduced something called dynamic arrays. Now, if any one of you comes from a programming background, you understand what an array is, right? It's a list of either text, any data type, a list of any data type stored in the list format. So now in Excel, what happens is the traditional one formula, one cell got converted or got updated with one formula, multiple cells, which we refer to as dynamic arrays. So in 2021, essentially Excel was no more just a spreadsheet with functions and formulas. It is now it is termed as a programming language. It is Turing complete. And along with dynamic arrays, not just the concept of array, wherein if I select a range of cells and it spills the value in multiple cells. Not just that, but Microsoft introduced dynamic array functions as well, and we look at that. So the changes that Microsoft did in 2021 were essentially these. So co-authoring, wherein like in Google Sheets, you can work on the same sheet, multiple people can work on the same sheet, same functionality. It was available on Excel online, but on the Excel desktop app, it was not available. Uh, it improved the comments. It improved the know who's in your workbook, which is essentially understanding who is currently active on the Excel worksheet. They introduced visual refresh, the X lookup function. I don't know if any one of you has used it. It was introduced in 2021. Then they introduced the let function. Let basically allows you to give names to your syntax within a function, within a formula that you can create. Then dynamic arrays is something that we'll discuss. Then X match is the traditional match function, but on steroids. Then it introduced something called as sheet views, wherein you can view multiple sheets at the same time. It improved accessibility, uh, helped with performance improvements. And one feature that was useful was earlier in Excel, when you have like 10 sheets and you've hidden nine of those and you wanted to unhide them, you had to do it individually. But Microsoft, very late, but good to have that feature, unhide many sheets at the same time. Now, dynamic array formulas, there is something that is filled array behavior, right? We'll jump to the Excel as well in a second, wherein when I select a range of cells and I get the output is filled in the same range. Just to demonstrate, so if I were to select these range of cells from A, let me know if I should zoom in or if this is visible. I'll- I hope this is clear.
Yes, sir.
So in earlier, what used to happen was when I select a range of cells, right, like on my screen, and I used to press enter, Microsoft Excel would just give me the first value, which is 1 in this case. But now since 2021, and when I select a range of cell and I press enter, it spills all the values in the selected range. Right? So this is the basic concept wherein you can select a range and the values that are out given as an output are called a spilled range. Array is not a new concept. It is already there in programming. This slide is just to let you know if someone who's not from a programming background, see, because Excel is like the bread and butter of organizations. So all of you have to work on it irrespective of what function or what role you decide to get into, right? So this slide is just to make you aware that arrays as a concept are there in programming, and whatever language you pick, I've shown six on the screen. Python, Java, C Sharp, JavaScript, C++, C Sharp, Ruby, any language, array as a concept has been there in programming for a very long time, right? It is essentially a data structure that can hold a collection of values of the same data type, like I had mentioned in the beginning. Jumping to the next slide, let me just hide. Now there is something that is traditional array, which was how Excel behaved with arrays earlier, and there is something called a dynamic array. So now let us just have a look at that. So when I select a range where I want the output. So earlier, this is how you would have to apply an array function or an array formula. I first select the range, then I press an equal to, then I go and select my range, then I press Control Shift Enter. Now when I press Control Shift Enter, what essentially happens is here in the cell, you see A4 is to A8. But if I go to the formula bar at the top, you see these curly brackets that are coming. These curly brackets are the traditional arrays. This is how you would work with an array prior to the introduction of dynamic arrays, right? So this is how it would look. In the cell, you would just see the normal cell, but in the formula bar, you would see the curly brackets. So this is how the traditional array would look like. So if I were to just do a square of these values, right, I would get the so sorry, I didn't press Control Shift Enter. If you want the traditional arrays, you will have to press Control Shift Enter. When I do that, I get the output. And if you look at the formula bar at the top, there are curly brackets denoting that this is an array function, array formula, right? Now, like I mentioned, now Excel does not have the capability to spill one value when an entire range is selected, right? So in some case, when you want a single value after selecting a range as well, you can just add a at the rate at the beginning, and Excel will give you just the first value of the selected range. This is something new that was introduced because Microsoft Excel changed its fundamental calculation engine. So if people wanted this functionality wherein they wanted to select a range and just get the first value as an output, this is still available. You just have to put the character at the rate before the formula, whatever range you are selecting, right? How does a dynamic array function look like? It is exactly the same, but there is one major difference that I'll show you right now. So you do the same process, right? But you don't have to press Control Shift Enter. So if you speak to anyone who maybe is working on Excel, any version prior to Excel 2016 or even 2019, when they work with an array formula, especially in finance, when you have to build models, when you have to select range, and when you want the ranges to be dynamic, so you had to press Control Shift Enter. But now all I have to do is select the range. We'll be squaring these, and the output is filled. Do you see when my any of these cells is active, there's a slight blue border that is coming in, right? There's a slight blue border, but that border is not coming here with the traditional array. We'll get to that in a second. Why this blue border? So whenever you see a blue border like this, it means that it is a dynamic array formula or a dynamic array. And here the interesting thing is you cannot delete anything, right? So if in the traditional array, I wanted to delete the second value, okay, so it would not let you like in the traditional array. Even in the dynamic, so in the traditional array, it threw you an error. So you cannot change a part of an array. If you look on the screen right now, so essentially an array, Excel will not allow you to change a part of an array, even in the traditional and in the dynamic array. So if I try to delete it, it will not let me delete it. But if I were to replace this, so it'll give me an error. If I were to replace any value, it'll give me an error. We'll get to that error in a second. This hashtag spill pound spill error is a new error that was introduced along with dynamic arrays. Like I mentioned, a dynamic array gives you spilled values. So the error that happens is a spill. So this is your spill range essentially, wherein I selected the range A13 to A17 and I squared it. And when a dynamic array function is applied or a formula is applied on any range, you see it with a blue border. Most organizations are not working with Microsoft 365. And the adoption of dynamic arrays is not a lot. Firstly, because not everyone has Microsoft 365. Secondly, even if some people have it in the organization, some don't, the others who don't have it will not be able to see the formulas that you've written. So if you have the latest version and you share the file with someone who has an older version of Excel, they will not, they will see the value in it. They will see the values, but they will not be able to do it. Any change or any edit that they make to it will break the links because they do not have the dynamic array functions with them. Now, something very peculiar about dynamic array function. Since you cannot change any part of an array when working with dynamic arrays, the formula bar for the first range, for the first cell in the range, it'll show you a black font in the formula bar. So if I select the first range, first cell, which is B13 in my range, and I just take it to the formula bar at the top, I can edit this, right? I can make any changes, right? I can, instead of a square, I can cube these. But if I select the second cell in the range, second cell in the range, you see there's a gray border and it will not allow me to edit. It will basically not allow me to do anything, right? You see that the font over here in the formula bar is gray because you cannot change any part of an array. So the formula bar will not allow you to change any cell value, any cell that is not the first cell in the range, right? So this is a peculiar behavior within the dynamic arrays. So a traditional array formula. Now we look at some examples of a traditional array versus a dynamic array formula. Like I mentioned, if you refer to the notes on the right hand side of the screen, traditional array was one cell, one result. Dynamic array is one cell, multiple results. This is the fundamental difference, right? So if we jump to the next example, so if I want to calculate profit margin, right? How would you do it earlier? You would select the profit divided by the sales. And I will just press Control Shift down, Control Shift up, and press Control D. So you can either, if you want to copy the formula down, one way is you press Control D. The other is you can click on this small box that appears at the corner of the cell where the formula is written. You get this plus sign. You do a double click and the values are filled. Or you can do a simple Control C and Control V. Right. So the shortcut is Control D. You highlight the range and press Control D, and the formula gets dragged down. Now, what is happening is I'll just display the formula here. Each cell I go to, it is C6 by B6, C7 by B7. Each row is a calculation is happening at a row level. Now, so this is how we've been doing. This is how we do it. Now, when in case of a dynamic array, just check how it happens. I press an equal to. I select the entire profit range C4 to C20. Let me zoom in. I select the entire range C4 to C20 and I divide it by the entire sales values, which is B4 to in the range B4 to B20. And when I press enter, Excel spills all the values for me. And now here, since an array, you can only change the formula in the first cell of the range. You see that across, even if I do a show formula here, you will see the formula only in the first cell. So this is a peculiar behavior of a dynamic array. Like I showed it over here, if I calculation is happening at a row level. Here the calculation is happening at an array level. So only since the first cell is editable in that dynamic array range, the output is called a spilled value, spilled array behavior. This the technical term for it is a spilled array behavior. Let me just turn off the show formulas. So if you're on any Excel sheet and you want to see what are the calculations applied, you don't know how many formulas are there, where are there. So you can go to the formula tab and just click on show formula. This works at a sheet level. So if I do show formula and the sheet I'm present on, only on that sheet I'll see all the formulas and I'll have to turn it on and off on each sheet that I want to do. So it displays the formula in each cell. The shortcut is Control Tilt. Tilt is the key above the tab button, right? Windows minus to zoom out. So far, any questions? So we saw how a calculation can be performed on a normal range of cells using the traditional array and the dynamic array. Now, the spill error that I mentioned, jumping to the PowerPoint again. Shift F5. Yeah. So we saw how a traditional array and a dynamic array formula behave. So the differences are quite clear. The formula output for a traditional array, each cell outputs a single value. And in the dynamic array formula or function, a single cell can output multiple values. In the traditional array, if you ask someone in the corporate, working with traditional, especially someone working in finance, modeling on Excel, working with traditional arrays was very complex. The control shift enter method was very complex. I showed you a very simple example to demonstrate, but when you're working with a model and you want to refer to ranges that are dynamic, it becomes a little complex. And in a dynamic array, it's fairly simple. Formulas can naturally spill over into the adjacent cells. And if you're working with a table and you update new values, so the values in the dynamic array output, the dynamic array spill range will also automatically get updated. Complex tasks using dynamic arrays has made doing complex tasks on Excel much simpler. Like I mentioned earlier, backward compatibility as in dynamic arrays in legacy Excel. Any version, when I say old Excel, any version prior to Excel 2016, you will, whenever you open a dynamic array formula Excel spreadsheet that has any dynamic array formula, it'll give you a formula error with this hashtag underscore XLFN to indicate that this functionality is not supported. If you edit anything, so you'll see the value, but in the formula bar, you will see underscore XLFN. I was not able to create a screenshot for this since I don't have an older version. But if you break the formula, as in you try to edit the formula, make any change to it, you will get a hashtag name error. So that will break the formula. So with the introduction of dynamic arrays, we also have a new error that has come, which is a spill error. A spill error is caused essentially due to these, not just these things, but five and many more. So if your spill range isn't blank, like the example that I'll show you right now. So if I jump to the Excel, so let's say I have some data here and I want to sort this data, right? Actually, let me do this also so that I can show you the new function as well. So in Excel, there was no way earlier to get a list of unique values from any range. But now we have a function Excel called unique, which returns the unique values from a range or array. So it takes three arguments, but you only need the first one. So you select your entire range and you press enter and you will get a list of unique customers. So I think I have around 51,290 customers, list of customers, and out of that 796 are unique, right? So this equal to unique, fairly simple. Dynamic array, the functions on their own, individually unique, very simple to understand. It gets complex when you start to use them together, right? Let's say I want to sort this. So how do we do a sorting in Excel? If anyone can answer, how do you sort? If I wanted to sort column A, how do I do it? If any one of you works on Excel and knows how to sort the data, how to sort a column, you can unmute yourself and yeah, Bharat,
Uh, yes, sir. So we simply create a filter, and after creating a
sure,
filter, we can alphabetically sort the
sure.
list.
So you go to home itself. On home, on the right hand side, thank you, Bharat. You have sort and filter. You can apply the filter from there, or the shortcut is Alt A. Shortcut for the applying the filter is Alt AT, or you can go to home and you can go to filter, right? And you have sort A to Z or Z to A over here as well, and you have sort A to Z and Z to A over here as well. Now the interesting bit is if you sort your data over here, it gets sorted in the unique customer list as well, right? So now in Excel, a new dynamic array function is sort. So there are two functions, sort and sort by. We look at both of them. For now, I'll just give you an example of what a spilled array looks like. I want to sort this, right? Sort index is my column by which I want to sort. In this case, since I'm selecting just one column, I want to sort only by that column. Sort index is the number of column number, right? And if I do a comma, it'll ask me the sort order. Let's say I want a descending order. Before I press enter, you see that when I select, when you apply a formula, while applying a formula, when you select the entire range, Excel takes you down, right? So if
Mm.
I were to just write this formula again, let me zoom out. If I were to write this formula again and I select this range, how do you come up? What is the shortcut to come back to the top? One is you scroll individually, but if you're working with thousands of row, how do you do it? Just press Control Backspace. It takes you to your formula again, right? Now you see it is referring to this range as C4 pound, C4 hash. So when Excel refers to any range that is a dynamic array, a spilled array, it will refer to it as a with a pound. So when I add a pound at the end of it, so one way is I can write, if I wanted to refer to just C4 and C2, this is how we do it, right? C6, say this is how we do it. But if I want to select the entire range, that is a dynamic array range, a spilled array, I will write C4 hash or pound. And this doesn't work with the normal range. So if I were to, let's say, just sort this, I can't write a hashtag, it'll do nothing, right? If you see, this blue border is just around the first cell. It'll give me a reference error because it doesn't understand. But in case of a dynamic array range, when working with that, if I write a sort and if I refer to this range, I can just write C4 hash. Then our index is 1, sort order is -1, last argument is not mandatory. I press enter. When I press enter, you see that there's a blue border that is being created till the very end, till the 51,290th row, right? So Excel is trying to give me the output in this range, but it is not able to since there is data in this range, right? So if I were to just delete this, Excel will give me the output. But since there is no space for Excel to spill the data, it is not able to spill it. So a spill range isn't blank. That is when you get this error. If there are merged cells, you will get a spill error. If the spill range is in a table, dynamic arrays are not supported in Excel tables. One fundamental tip, don't work with tables. Tables is the control T. Whenever I'm working on Excel, so if you do a control T, you get something called as a table. This new option opens up, table design, right? Do not work with tables because when you work with tables, you're working in isolation. What essentially happens is, let's say now I've created this as a table. If I want to refer to Aaron Bergman, this is how it refers to it. If I just do a equal to, this is how it refers to it. So when you work with tables and you share the file with someone, it is difficult for the other person to understand what's happening, right? So I'll just convert this back to a range and we will go back to our PowerPoint. So this is a spilled error, right? A new error that is introduced along with the dynamic array formulas and functions in 2021. It occurs when a formula produces multiple results but cannot output them all on the sheet, right? The implicit intersection operator, like I showed to you on the first slide, first sheet, if I want to just refer to the, I'll write a hash, refer to the, I just get the output as one formula, one cell output, which is the traditional one. So even though this is a dynamic array formula, if I just refer to this, if I just refer to this, if I refer to a range, it gives me a range, right? But if I'm referring to a range, if I'm referring to this range using a hash, the entire range is selected as visible here. But if I go to the beginning and write an at the rate, it just gives me the first value. This is something new. It is called an implicit intersection operator. You can read more about it on the Microsoft official website. There's a lot of documentation available here. So you can read about this here. So now we not go into it. Right. Dollar signs. Why do we use dollar signs in Excel? Can anyone answer that?
So to freeze the panes, like you don't want to change the column number or the row number.
Perfect. Thank you, Bharat. Perfect. So you use dollar signs to freeze panes. With dynamic arrays, you don't need to do that. I'll show you how. So I'll just go down to the next page. We're done with this. Yeah. So traditionally, how you would write it is, I'll do an equal to. I'll select the cell that I want to multiply. So I want to calculate discount. The standard discount that we want to give according to some ongoing festivity is 1.2% to all the top customers. Now, if I write this formula, come down, press Control D, I don't get the output. Because what is happening is, if I show you the formula, in the first cell it is working fine. But when I drag the formula to the next cells, it is multiplying by F3, F4, but there are no values. So I want Excel to multiply my sales amount by F2 only. So in that case, what I do is I freeze F2. How do you freeze a cell? You use the function plus F4, the F4 key. If you press it once, it'll freeze both the row and the column. So this area gets locked. Now, when I drag my formula down, I get the correct output. How do you, so to go into a cell to see what the formula is, you can press F2. So when you press F2, it'll take you inside the formula, right? Inside the cell. So now here, I had to apply a dollar sign, right? And working with dollar signs, when you're working with large data sets, it becomes a little tricky. This is very simple example for demonstration purposes, but this is called this is an absolute harm. This is an absolute reference. Absolute reference is where you freeze both the row and the column. A relative reference is something like this. I'm just referring to F2 here. So this is a relative reference because when I move down, it'll change the row, and when I move to the right, it'll change the column. When you come down, you want to copy something, you press Control D. When you want to do it on the right, you press Control R. That is the shortcut for it. You select the ranges and you press Control R. So in this case, when I do a Control R or Control D, copy the formula to the right or left, you see that it changes from F2 to F3, F F2 to F3, F4, F5 when we go down, and G2, H2, I2, J2. So we don't want that from happening. We want to avoid that from happening. And in that case, we use the freeze, which is the dollar sign. With dynamic array, it's fairly simple. I select the entire range, I multiply it with the discount. I get the output. You can only change the first cell. I do not need to refer to F2 as a absolute reference since I'm multiplying my entire range by, let me just show you what is happening within the formula. So let me zoom in a bit so that it's visible to all of you. When I press F2, I open the cell, I look at the formula. When I select so in Excel, this is also something new that has come. You select a part of a formula and it shows you what all values it is storing, right? Another is if you press F9, it'll show you all the values. So when you select it, just highlight it, it'll show you all the values at the top. When you press F9, it'll show you what it is doing, right? So if I press F and F2 and I select just F2, so it is showing me that's 0.012, which is 1.2%. And if I press F9, it'll show me the actual value. So and when I come down in the dynamic array range, any cell apart from the first cell, I don't see the formula. If I try to go into the cell, I don't see the formula because I cannot edit it. I cannot delete it, like I mentioned. But if you change a value anywhere, it'll spill. It'll give you a spill error because you've disrupted the spilled array. So you don't need to use dollar signs. We look at 2, 3 more examples on dollar signs. Here's a mixed reference. I want to multiply the subcategory sales with 3 forecast percentages, 3 scenarios that I'm calculating. So I'll need to use dollar signs here, right? In a traditional array, I need to use dollar signs. So tell me, what will the formula be? Yeah, Bharat.
So one doubt I had,
Sure.
like in many cases, we need to treat some rows especially
Hmm.
where we need to change the formula or add some correction factors.
Right.
So is there any provision in the case of array to do that?
Yeah. So if you're referring to a single cell that you know is not going to change, you don't need to lock it. When you use that in any calculation, in an array calculation, dynamic array calculation, Excel will refer to that whenever you move the formula down or to the right, Excel will refer to that cell only. It will not move the position of that referred cell. So in this case, when I got the output, you see, if you look at the formula bar at the top, I am at C12, but it is multiplying by F2. Whereas in the previous case, what
Hmm.
had happened was if I was at C12, it was without the dollar. So if I just remove the dollar, so to apply a double dollar, which is freeze your row and column, you press F4 once. If I press F4 twice, it freezes my row. If I press F4 thrice, it freezes my column. If I press F4 one more time, it'll remove the freeze. It will become a relative reference. Yeah. So without the reference, what is happening here, Bharat, is it is moving the position of the cell that I'm referring to, right? So I
Right,
need to
right.
freeze it. But in a dynamic array, I don't need to freeze it because I'm multiplying my entire sales range by that one single value. So Excel dynamic array knows that it has to refer to this value in F2 here. So it will not change because it's giving us, it's not happening at a row level. Here, everything is happening at a row level. Here, there is no way for you to early now though if I try to do it, it'll give me a dynamic array only. But earlier, if you try to select an entire range and multiply, so in a traditional array formula, let's see how it will happen. So traditional array formula is applied by Control Shift Enter. So if any one of you does not have the latest versions, you can go and try this. If you select a range of cells and press Control Shift Enter, you'll get the even if you press Control Shift Enter, although it is an array, you will still get the first value, right? But if you select a range, right? If I select a range, I press equal to, I refer to this, and I press Control Shift Enter, it'll give me output in the selected range. If I go to the top at the formula bar, it'll give me curly brackets highlighting that it is an array, right? So in this case, you even if I now in this case, since this is an array, I cannot refer to it, right? So even if this is an array, so if I were to do it, let me just show you how it will be done. So I'll select the entire range. Okay. I'll write in equal to, I want to multiply my sales amount by my discount percentage. I'll do a Control Shift Enter. So it'll give me the value. Since this is wrapped in an array, the value is not changing, right? So if you don't have the dynamic array version with you, the latest Excel version, this is how you can do it. Control Shift Enter. You select the range of cells that you want the output to be in. In the cell, the formula is simple. The formula is how it is normally. But if you look at the formula bar, when you press a Control Shift Enter, it adds curly brackets, right, at the beginning and at the end. So that denotes array, and that the calculation is happening within the curly brackets. So that's how you do it,
So,
Bharat. Yeah.
so just in case if you want to multiply the in the E9 column, for example,
Hmm.
E9 cell, if you
Okay.
want to multiply with 1.3, so is it a possibility
No.
using this
So in
dynamic array?
no. In any array, in that case, array is a will not let you edit the array, right? Like I
Okay.
mentioned earlier, even in traditional, so when you use a traditional formula, traditional array, it gives you this error. But with a dynamic, it will not give you any error. It will not let you do anything only. So even if I try to delete this, nothing will happen. If I try to
Okay.
change it, it will break the array.
Hmm.
Similarly here, I don't think we can change the traditional. So in the traditional array, you can't even change an array, right? But they've added a spill error. So earlier there was no spill error. Now they've added a spill error.
So like just you selected a few cells and
Hmm.
then press Control Enter,
Control Shift Enter.
Control
Yeah.
Shift Enter. So it entered the initial
Yes.
in that order only the
Yes.
elements of the
So
array.
yeah,
So
if
if we
I
want to
hmm,
enter from a certain like from a certain number from number 5, we want it to enter from 5 to 10, like
yeah,
the element number 5 to 10 of the array. So is it
hmm,
an option with us?
element number as in the row number within the array.
Yeah, row number within the
Yes,
array.
there is a function called sequence. So this is a new function that is introduced in Excel. So when I write simple formula, when I write sequence 10, it gives me a sequence of 10 numbers. Uh, I can do this for columns as well, right? So let me just change the formatting to general. So my formula is sequence 10 comma 10. The first argument is number of rows that you want. The second argument is number of columns if you want that. Then you can give it a start also. Let's say I want to start at 5 at intervals of 5. Step is basically an interval. So I want 10 rows, I want 10 columns. I want it to start with the value 5, and I want 5 as an interval. So you'll get this. You'll get something like this. So but in a traditional array formula, sequence will not work. In
All
your
right.
systems, if you have so you will have to use index. So index basically tells you basically when we use an index, one second. Let's say I want to find this. it'll help you find the position of the cell, comma, exact matches 0. So index basically tells you the position of the cell. So if I just to show you, if I select E4, it'll show me that E4 is this value, which is 20. But if I press an F9, it'll show me the actual value. So index will let you extract the position of the cell. Essentially, what an index does is reference a value. Just zoom in so that you'll be able to return a value or reference of the cell at the intersection of a row and a column in a given range. So you can use index in combination with whatever calculation you want to do. But sequence will not work, right?
Right, so thank you.
Yeah. Dynamic array. So here I will, if I want to multiply my sales amount by each of the percentages mentioned in the column, one simple exercise is this. This is the formula, right? But obviously, when I drag this formula down or to the right, it is not correct because it is I have not frozen anything, so it is taking the previous value. Just Control Z, and now I'll freeze. So since my sales value is in column B, I want to freeze my column B because when I move to the right, I don't want my column B to shift. Similarly, when I move down, I don't want my row 4 to shift because all my percentages, forecast percentages are in column in row 4. So I'll press F4 twice, right? And now when I drag down, let me just Control D and Control R to move right. Now when I drag down and right, I get the correct formula. So if I just check the formula, it'll say that it is correct, right? So without freezing, you'll obviously not be able to get it. But in this case, if you've never worked with freezing references, it becomes a little tricky, right? What do I should I freeze a row? Should I freeze a column? For example, in this case, sometimes people end up freezing both the row and the column as a mistake. And what will happen is you'll get the same answer because you want your row to move. You want your sales to go from row 5 to row 6 to row 7. In a dynamic array, formula would look like this. You refer to the entire range and multiply it by the three percentages and you get value in one single formula. Here you have to write, either you write one formula. If some people write three formulas for each of the separate columns, you have to drag it down. With dynamic arrays, you don't need all that. One formula will give you multiple results, like you see on the screen. And a dynamic array, how do you identify if it's a dynamic array? You can visually identify by the blue border and the slight highlight that is coming. That means that it is a dynamic array, and you can only edit the first formula in the range. You cannot first cell in the selected range. You cannot edit any other cell. You cannot delete anything. But if you change anything, you will get a spill error. Let's see what else do we have. Formula bar. No more dollar signs. Multiple values, rows and columns is something that we did right now. Okay, I don't have anything else on PowerPoint. So we'll just stick to the Excel now. Right. Now, do you guys have any questions? We can obviously take questions. I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. We'll take a 2-minute pause. If you have any questions, you can ask them. All good? Okay. I'll reshare my screen again. Now tell me something. How do you, if I tell you, I want you to find a unique list of customers. I have 51,000. Let's take segments. So if I select the headers and I press Alt 8T, I'll apply the filter. Let me zoom in. I have three segments, right? I have consumer, I have corporate, and I have home office. I have three segments. Now, if I want a unique list of these three segments, how will you do it? Anyone? Yeah, Bharat, please go ahead.
So from data, we have an option of consolidate.
Consolidate, sure. But again, that is going to require some steps on your part, right?
Yes.
But there is no formula, there's no function in Excel that was there prior to dynamic arrays that can fetch you a list of unique values from your database or data set. Now, all you have to do is select the unique function, returns the unique values from a range and an array. Fairly simple, it's self-explanatory. I want, let's say I want unique customer names. Now that I've come down, I've selected the entire range. How do I go back up? I press Control Backspace. It takes me back to the formula. Right? Let me select that again. And the other arguments are not necessary for this example. So you get the unique list of customers, right? So we have 51,290 something rows, but my unique distinct customers are 798. Now, what is the difference between distinct and unique? Can anyone tell me? This is distinct customer. What is the difference between distinct and unique?
Sir, I think distinct customer are those whose name are repeated, and unique customer are those whose name are only single time in a row.
Perfect. Thank you, Vikas, for that answer. Perfect. So, like Vikas said, unique. So when I tell someone you have a unique name, that means you're the only person with that name in the world, right? Similarly, in this case, like Vikas said, Aaron might be someone whose name is appearing multiple times. So when I do a unique equal to unique, the unique function, it'll give me Aaron, Justin, because their names are appearing multiple times, right? If I want to identify unique, let's say you want to see which customer has purchased only once. Let's say this is the data for that, let's say last quarter. You see that these customers are your repeat customers because they're coming multiple times. But there might be some customers who have purchased once, had a bad experience, and never came back. You also need to look at, analyze that. So we'll use the unique function only. And within the unique function, we'll give the, so I'll select my range. It's an A3, control backspace, do comma. You can, returns all unique. You can skip this, and last argument is what I'm concerned with. So by default, it is false, right? In the previous case, in column G, I did not apply any other arguments. By default, it is false. But if I write true, it'll give me two values because these two customers are in my data set only once. Let's check that. Let's validate that. So let me just copy the name. I'll just type it, not an issue. So if I write Dwight, you see that this person is appearing only once in my entire set. Now, if I search for Aaron, let's say Aaron Bergman, which is the first person, his name is also appearing once when I check in the filter. Can you tell me the reason for this? Dwight, we know, is only appearing once. But Aaron, since he is a distinct customer, we know he's made multiple purchases, maybe in different segments and subcategories. But why is his name appearing in filter only once? Can anyone tell me? So it's all right. So filter by nature here will show you only one value. So although Aaron Bergman is in my data set, he's made more than 5-10 purchases. In the filter, it'll show me only once. Many of the times when you're cleaning a data, when you maybe take part in a case competition or when you start working or have worked somewhere, whenever you get a data set, first is you check if the data is clean. What do you mean by that? Let's say there's a space in the data. In any of the cells, there's a space. So when you refer to that cell in a formula or something, you'll not be able to get it. Now that I've put a space in Aaron, I've added a space. And when I search for Aaron now, it'll still give me one output, it'll show me one result in the filter. So filters a little deceiving. So when you see that Aaron Bergman here is once, mentioned only once, that does not mean that his name everywhere is mentioned in the same format. These are not even case sensitive. So I am searching for Aaron Bergman in all small. It'll show me Aaron Bergman in all. So these are case insensitive, right? So even if there's a space in your data set, do not rely on the drop downs, filter drop downs to see if the data is clean or not, right? You will always have to either do a trim to clean the data. I'm sure you're aware of the trim function. It just trims the data set for you, trims the selected range. It deletes any leading or trailing spaces and leaves the space between two words or two characters. Right? So this is distinct, this is unique. Distinct is customers who purchased multiple times and their names are mentioned only once. Distinct is someone who's purchased only once from you for whatever time period this data set is. Now let's do a sort, right? If you want to sort this data, Excel now has a sort function. So I can write equal to sort. It does sorts a range or an array. I select the entire range, right? Control backspace, comma. I have to give the sort index, right? When you manually sort, there is something known as custom sorting, which is you have different levels. You define first level, second level, and third level of sorting. But with one formula, you're able to do this now, so you don't have to apply multiple steps. Sort index is basically I have selected 4 columns. I'm aware of the indexing concept. In programming, indexing starts at 0. So the first value is at 0 position. At 0 position, 0 position is the first position. It doesn't start from 1, it starts from 0. In Excel, it starts from 1, right? So when I write 1, what is this 1 referring to over here? This 1 is referring to the first column. Let's say I want to sort by my sales, which is my 4th column, because my sales is in the column D, which is my 4th column in the selected range. So I'll write 4. Then it asks you for a sort order, ascending or descending. Let's say I want descending. And the last argument is not mandatory here. It'll ask you sort by column or row. It's not mandatory in this case. And I press enter and it'll sort the data for me in the descending order. And this is a dynamic range. Now, when I want to refer to this sorted, my original data is intact. I've sorted this data for some analysis, some purpose, maybe just for extraction. When I want to refer to this range, what do? I can select meeting summary. Sure. I can select the I can select the first cell and I can just put a pound sign, a hash sign. It selects the entire range for me. So I can refer to a dynamic array formula just by a hashtag, the cell reference and a hash or a pound sign. So sort is fairly simple. You write equal to sort, which is the dynamic array function. You select the range. You give it the sort index, the column, the position of the column with which you want to sort. In Excel, indexing starts from 1. If you've worked with any programming languages or will be working, will start learning, so Python, for example, indexing starts at 0, not at 1. So the first position, if you want to refer to the first column customer name in Python, you will have to call out the position 0, right? Similarly, there is something called as sort by. There's a function called as sort by. Now, this is fairly interesting. If you worked with sorting, there's an option custom sort. So if I just show you for a second, if I go to sort, there's something called as custom sort that allows me to add levels. So when I say levels, मैं पहले sales के basis पे sort कर सकता हूँ, ascending या descending. फिर मैं सब category के basis पे sort कर सकता हूँ. But this is all happening in your original data. Now with sort by, sorts a range or array based on the values in corresponding range or array. Basically, what will happen is, if you want the list of your top customers, okay, you select the range, control backspace, and now I'll say that I want to sort my names by my sales, let's say ascending order, let's say bottom value customers, and it'll tell me, right? If I replace this with the -1, it'll show me the top customers. So I don't have to select both of those ranges in a single, both of those columns in a single range, right? Because Excel is able to map it with the adjacent cells. Now here, since you want all the 4 columns as the output, I'll use sort by. I'll select my entire range. Now here you can add multiple levels like custom sort, but within your formula. So by array 1 is essentially referring to the array. So let's say I want to sort by my segment first. I'll select my segment. I want to sort in an ascending order. Then it is asking me what is the next level of sort that you want by array 2. So I can stop here. I can just sort by my segment, or I can have a next level. Let's say I want to sort by my subcategory as well in an ascending order, which is 1. And then I want to sort by my sales in a descending order, right? And when I close this, so let me just break it down. Alt Enter. When you're writing formulas in Excel, it is advisable for readability at least that you break your formulas into separate lines. So after the comma, after an argument, after the comma, you can press Alt Enter. It'll take you to the next line. This makes it much more easier to read, right? So it is easier to understand for the person that you're teaching to. Like for in my case, I've broken it down into 4 lines rather than one simple line, so it's easier to understand. So when I press enter, I have consumer, then I have corporate, then I have home office sorted in ascending. Then I have appliances, then I have bookcases. Bookcases just one. Storage here. Then we have appliances again. Appliances within corporate. So let's say within consumer, I have appliances, and then appliances sorted, the sales is sorted in a descending order. So to do it with a custom sort, you would, custom sort, you would have to add a level. So you would have to add multiple levels wherein you choose the first column, then you choose the second column, then you choose the third column, and you decide how do you want to sort that. But here, with one single formula, you're able to do it, and it is dynamic. So if your data set gets updated tomorrow, this will remain dynamic. Is this clear, everyone? I'll move to the...
Yes, sir.
Perfect. We have 5 minutes only. Let me show you the last example, and then I'll come to the other one if we have time. What is a customer lifetime value, CLV? Are you aware of the metric CLV? Anyone?
No, sir.
No, that's fine. Customer lifetime value is over from when inception, since the customer first did business with you, bought something, till date, or how much has he purchased? He or she has purchased, right? So to do something as simple as, not very simple. So in marketing, you have a formula for customer lifetime value, but to do this in Excel, to calculate this in Excel for our top 5 customers or whatever top N customers, now that we have dynamic array function, it is much easier, right? So I have a same data set over here. I have customer name, segment, subcategory, sales. I have 51,290 rows. Let's say I want to first extract the unique list of customers. Which function will I write? Equal to unique. I'll select my customer list. I'll press enter. It'll give me the unique list of customers, which is 798. Right? Now, I want to do a sum if. Is everyone aware of a sum if? I'll just tell you still. So in sum if, a sum is a basic sum wherein you do the total for a range. A sum if is when you do the total basis a criteria. So the arguments are a range first, then a criteria, and then the sum range. So my range is going to be A4 to A51,293. Then I want to refer to column G. Do I go and select G4 to the G51,293? No. I'll just write G4 and hash. Right? Fairly simple. Comma, sum range is my column D. And once I press enter, my values are here. Right? Now these values are not in the correct order. Right? So you have to sort it. So I have to sort by. I'll use a sort by. I have to sort my entire array, control backspace, by my, so H4 hash. I want to sort the entire, even here, you can just use a G4 hash, I think. No, G4 hash will not give you anything. G4, comma, F2. Let's say the entire range. Control backspace. Comma, sort order. We want a descending order because we want to see our top customers. We want to see the customers' highest value of sales. Press enter. It will give you that Tom Ashbrook is the customer with the highest sales. Now you just want to extract 5, let's say. You just want to look at top 5 customers. How do you do that? So for that also, Excel has introduced a function called take. It returns rows or columns from an array, start or end. So I use take. I select my range, which I can refer to by J4 hash. And let's say I want 5 rows, I can just write 5 and I can close this and it gives me 5 top customers. You can even make this dynamic. So if I change this 5 and refer to it to P1, right? Now here I didn't have to freeze P1 also. So if I want top 10 customers, it'll show me top 10. If I want top 2 customers, it'll show me top 2. Now these are 5 distinct formulas. What if I were to do this in one single formula? The process would still be same. You would first do a unique. I'll do it here. So you will first do a unique for an entire range, right? Control backspace. Then once you have the unique, you will wrap the unique within a sum if. Now within the sum if, what will be your range? My range will be the customer name, comma, what will be my criteria? My criteria is going to be the unique, F2. My criteria is going to be the unique list of customers that comes in. So now I don't have to refer to a range. I want to sum by my sales. So I'll select my sales. I'll close this. Now we're not done. Control backspace. After first we did a unique, then we did a sum if. We took out a unique list of customers, then we wrapped it in a sum if, right? I'll break it down into different lines so that it is easier to read. F. You press Alt Enter to take it to the next line, right? Now I want to wrap this sum if in something else. What function? Sort by. I want to sort my entire range by my sales. So by the sum if that is happening. So you want to sort that entire range and just select this. I don't think you need to select it. Huh. You want to sort it in a descending order. -1. Now I close this and then I use a take, which is the fourth function that we did. And this is my entire array and I want the 5 rows. So it'll give me the, I don't think I sorted it. 1 second. Sort array by array. I think I'll have to put this entire thing only. Huh. So just breaking this formula for you. Alt Enter, right? So first we did a unique right here. I select the range, it shows me that I did a unique. Then I did a sum if over here. I wrapped the unique within a sum if. Then I had to sort. So to sort, I sort by what? By the unique list that is created. So this sum if plus unique is basically creating what was in G and H. The sort by is creating what was in J and K. This take is creating what was in column M and N. Now, even for this 5, I can make it dynamic by selecting the cell reference and it'll give me 5 values. I choose 10, it'll give me 10 values, right? So this is how you wrap the entire use dynamic array functions together. There is one more function called let. This basically allows you to give names within your formulas. So let me just do it over here itself. Fn. Just a second, my Excel, it's a little, it's hanging. FNF2. By the time, till then, if you have any questions, please go ahead. I don't know, there's something wrong with my Excel. Let me save it because I'll be sharing this with you as well. Till then, if you have any questions, you can ask them. This seems to be, I'm not able to do anything on my.
All these features that we are discussing, are these
Hmm.
available only on Microsoft 365
Yes,
or in some other version
Microsoft
also?
365 from Excel 2021, but Excel 2021 will have only those dynamic array functions that were launched in 2021 because that is a static version. There are no future updates coming in. So any updates that came in Excel in 2022 or 2023 will not be in the previous one. So if you need to get Excel, you will have to get the it's subscription based Microsoft 365. To just show it to you. Sorry, my laptop is getting a little stuck. Chrome. Hi,
Sir, also
Chrome.
can you throw some light on Xmatch and XLOOKUP?
Sure. Let me just, there's something wrong with my system. Just give me a second. Huh. So, Microsoft 365. I'm not able to do anything actually. Just give me a second. Let me figure out what's wrong. Nothing's wrong. It's just probably heated up. I'm not able to do anything. I'm not able to delete. Let me just close this file and reopen it. You said you wanted to look at XLOOKUP, right?
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
yes. XLOOKUP and Xmatch.
Match works exactly the same way. Match and X. I'll show you. Match and Xmatch works exact. I'm not able to do anything. Take a second. I think there's some issue. I'm not able to
What's your
input
breakdown?
any values.
क्या
You
बोला
can,
था? What's your?
yeah, because
Sir, I want to ask that all the things that we are discussing that session, that all the things we can also work in SQL too. So, what's your opinion to work in more efficiently in Excel or in SQL?
see, Excel you will always need because traditionally, if you go in a finance role, a marketing role, a sales role, you will not have access to an SQL database. Database engineers or data analysts, right? They have access to the database and they can use SQL to extract data from the cloud. If you're working on the front end, if you're on a customer facing role, you will not have, not even all data analysts have access to the database because that is something that the company's data is stored. So not every, there's a specific team, the database team that can use SQL to extract data from the database. So you will have to send a request to them. This is typically how it works. You send the MIS team or the database team a request, and they will get the data to you. For example, I used to work in DTDC Express Limited. We wanted any operational related data, so we had Tableau dashboards. I'm really sorry, my Excel is not working. Let me try one more time. If I'm able to do anything, I'll show you XLOOKUP. But is it working? FNF2. There's something wrong with my keyboard. Just give me a second. Vikas, so you need to learn Excel, obviously. But if you want to go in the data analyst sort of a role, Excel, SQL are like the two fundamental things that you need to have. Because if you open any job description on Naukri or on LinkedIn, Excel and SQL is a mandate, 100%. Any role, any data analyst, business analyst, even the data scientist role, Excel and SQL is mandatory. You will need to, yeah. Okay, it's working now. You wanted to see XLOOKUP? Someone said XLOOKUP, right? XLOOKUP is fairly simple. I'll just show it to you. Let me just pull out the data. So we have lifetime sales over here, right? Okay. So what's different with an XLOOKUP compared to a VLOOKUP? What is the difference between an XLOOKUP and a VLOOKUP? Can anyone tell me? VLOOKUP cannot look left. For example, let's say I wanted to see, and we'll give you just the first value. I'm just doing this for demonstration. We'll just get the first value as the output. If I wanted the sales amount for phones, let's say the first instance only, because VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP will give me the first instance only, right? My lookup value will be my phone. My table array will be this entire array. My column index number is, I want the sales amount, which is my column 2, and I want an exact match. So I'll write 0 or a false. So whenever in any Excel argument you are supposed to put in a false or a true, a 0 is a false and a true is a 1. So you either write a false or put in a 0, or you either write a true and put in a 1. So I'll give the first value, which is 221.98. Right. Now let's say you want to see phones falls under which category, right? You want to see phones falls under which category. You select phone, that's your VLOOKUP. Then you select segment and subcategory. Then you put in a comma. Now you want column index number is, your lookup value is the second column in the table array, and your output is in the first. So if you put 1 here and put a 0, Excel throws an error because VLOOKUP cannot look left. So here XLOOKUP comes into handy, wherein I want to search for phones in the array. So here, if you look in Excel, in VLOOKUP, you have to define a table array. यानी आपका जो lookup value है और जो output value है वो एक ही range में आपको select करना था. In XLOOKUP, your lookup array and your return array are two separate arguments. So my lookup array is, let's say, phones. So I'll select that, column C, control backspace to come up. And let's say I want output from the segments column. So you don't have to select them individually. So they can be anywhere. They don't have to be consecutive columns. They don't have to be adjacent to each other. The columns can be towards the left, towards the right. XLOOKUP does everything, right? I select consumer, comma. Then in VLOOKUP, if you want to check if there is an error and you want to display a message, right? A value is blank or something like that, you will have to wrap the VLOOKUP function in an if error function. But XLOOKUP में inbuilt functionality है, argument है for if not found. Let's say the value is not found. I want to say empty, right? I can type a string. Then it gives you the functionality for a match mode. Usually आप 0 और 1 के साथ ही काम करोगे. 0 is exact match. 1, -1 and 2. -1 is basically approximate. If it cannot find something exact, it will find the next smaller item. 1 is it will find the next larger item. Wildcard is matching parts of the string. So we want an exact match. And then XLOOKUP mein there is something called as a search mode. Now this is not very important to know, but sometimes you want to search from the start of your data is in a structured format. आप आपके data को sort नहीं कर सकते. For example, database है आपका, you cannot touch it. So sometimes what happens is you want to search from the first to the last or from the last to the first. So XLOOKUP gives this functionality also, wherein if I put 1, it will search first to last. When if I put -1, it will search last to first. Then it will do a binary search for me that relies on lookup array being sorted in ascending order. If not sorted, invalid results will be returned. So if my array is sorted in ascending order, I can do a binary search by using 2 and a -2. This is not mandatory right now. So just an exact match is necessary. And I'll get consumer. So although मेरा output का column जो था वो left पे था मेरे lookup column के, I can still get an output because Excel lookup array और return array, मेरा lookup array जो था और मेरा return array जो था, return array was to the left of the lookup array. VLOOKUP में work नहीं करता है. VLOOKUP में आपका return array जो है, अगर मुझे सेल्स ढूंढना है किसी भी पैरामीटर पे, कस्टमर नेम पे, कंज्यूमर पे, फोन पे, so my sales has to be towards the right. If my sales column is here at the beginning, VLOOKUP will not work because अगर मैं Aaron के sales ढूंढना, first instance of sales, let's say you want to find the first time Aaron has purchased, let's say ये data है ना first से लेके 31st एक month का है, and you want to find the first instance when Aaron has purchased, VLOOKUP will not be able to search कितना सेल है Aaron का because VLOOKUP हमेशा right में दिखता है. It looks towards the right. It never looks towards the left. Oh, so let's put some messages. Yeah. Right. So I have a filter that I wanted to show you. I'll just show you. Take 2 minutes. So XLOOKUP is clear, right? Then there is a new dynamic array function called filter. You have the normal filter, which you go to data, you go to filter, and you have the shortcut Alt-A-T, Control-Shift-L. Let me zoom in. But dynamic arrays may there is a new function which is your filter function, right? So if you write equal to filter, it'll ask you to select the array. So let's say I select the entire array. I press Control backspace to come up. I press a comma. It is asking me, what do you want to include in the filter? Let us say I want data only for the consumer segment. So I select the column which has I'll select the range which has my segments, which is B3 onwards, equal to consumer. Right? Now what will happen is, it will show me data only for the consumer segment. Right? Now, if you want to filter basis a cell reference, you can do that as well. So it's using the same formula, but I will not write consumer as a string. Let's say I'll refer to it in column O1. It is throwing me an error because it is not able, I haven't given it any reference to include. So if I write consumer here, it'll show me consumer. What other segments do we have? Corporate and home office. If I write corporate, it'll show me corporate. Another thing that you can do is, let's say you don't know how many unique segments you have. So you will do a equal to unique, right? You'll select the entire range, you'll do equal to unique. Now you can use this list, unique list of customers, to create a data validation. So you can go to data, you can go to data validation, select a list. Your source will be this. Basically, you're giving it a list, a drop down. You're creating a drop down. You go to data and data validation. Press OK. It'll show you the drop down. So now you've made it dynamic, wherein you select any of the segments and it'll show you the output for those segments. And then we have filtering with conditions, which is an and an or. So again, just copy the same formula. Let's say you don't want to refer to P1. Let's say we want to, or let's say we want to refer to P1. We'll create one more reference. So you will have to wrap these include within. So this is my first condition, wherein I'm saying that my segment should be equal to whatever is there in P1, either home office or corporate or consumer. Now, how do you use an AND to define a condition? You use AND. Usually that's a normal function. But within the filter, since filter is a dynamic array function, there's a different way of using and or defining those conditions. So I'll write an asterisk. When I write the asterisk, and then I'll define my second condition. Let's say I want to see data for specific customers, right? I'll press F and F3 to come out of the cell. I will select my list of customers and say it should be equal to, let's say I'll add a list of customers here in Q1 maybe, right? I have closed the bracket. So you need to close the bracket after you define the value. So you press Q2. Now it does not showing me anything because it's an AND. In an AND, both conditions need to be satisfied. So I'll just create a unique list of customers quickly. I'll do a equal to unique. I'll create a unique list of customers. I have it. Now again, I'll create a data validation. I'll go to data at the top, data validation, create a list. My source will be, where's my source? Hash. Don't want to freeze it. I don't think it'll be able to take a dynamic array reference. I'll manually select the range. Right now, when you select the name of a customer, it'll show you. I think there's something broken in the formula. Just a second. Filter include equal to P1, A32 equal to Q1. I'm not sure what is wrong. Let me do a plus. Okay, I'm not. So a plus is basically for an or. So an asterisk is for an and condition. A plus is for a or condition. I'm not sure why that's not working, but okay. This is basically how you do it. When you use a plus, it's an or condition. So either home office or Craig Ritter. When you use an and, it is home office and correct. Acha, it's no. So it's correct. It is basically because the name Craig Ritter does not purchase anything in the home office category. So if I come here, I apply a filter and I search for Craig Ritter, CRAIG, too many Craigs, Craig Ritter. So you'll see that he's not purchased anything in the home office segment. So that's why you're getting a calculation. There's nothing wrong with the formula. So if I input, change this to consumer, it will show me a value. So, and both conditions need to be satisfied. And the same formula, if I use, I've created a separate space for it just for ease of understanding. And I replace this asterisk with a plus, right? So now I see Aaron Bergman, everyone, because it is showing me either sales for Craig Ritter sales are only in consumer, or it is showing me everything in consumer. Any customers is purchased in the consumer segment, right? So this is how you use a filter function. I'm saving this file immediately after the session is over. I'll share it with Pranav and then you can forward it to you guys. So that's all from my side. Dynamic arrays. I hope you got an understanding of what all Excel has to offer now. I'll stop sharing my screen. If you have any questions, sorry for the extension of 20 minutes. If anyone has any questions, you can ask them, or we can go ahead and conclude the call.
Talha, I'm
Yes.
very sure that everyone would have questions. The session was so insightful only, but there is certain time limit, so we have to end now.
Yeah.
I will share a link with them, and they will
Sure,
give me the
sure.
questions. I'll forward it to you
Perfect,
and Havish
perfect.
also.
Perfect.
So thank you once again, Talha, and Havish too.
Thank you.
The chat section,
Thank you.
very helpful. And apart from that, we regret of tomorrow's guest lecture. And the guys here are the attendance today was not mandatory, but the participation you can see.
Yes.
Havish was asking me yesterday only how was the feedback. So I guess you get the broad idea.
Right.
So
Right.
thank you so
everyone.
much, Anna.
Thank you.
And Havish, thank you so much. We can conclude the call now.
Yes. You can leave. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.